Okay, so in the last video, we got to the point where we'd finished the first 2 rounds and we just started to establish this square shape. Now, if you're looking at your square and it seems a bit too bundled, if it seems like it's all curling in, it could be that your tension is quite tight and you are not chaining enough. So what you might want to do is just chain 3 between each corner, and in the corners, instead of the instructions say chain 1, but you might feel you need a bit more space, so chain 2. That should even out any tightness and any rounding or curling up. Okay, so the next piece, the next part that we do is we slip across that first cluster that we did. We slip across to the first chain space, and at this point as well, we are going to join our next color. So join the next color just as you would the previous colors. Now you can tighten a knot, or you can do the clasp weft join, however you want to do it. You can't really go far wrong on a blanket. And besides, if there are any mistakes, you can just seam them in later. So the clasp weft join, do it that way. Okay, so go straight into this chain space. Now, remember I said on the previous video that all corners stay the same for the entirety of the square. So at no point will you ever do fewer or more clusters in the corner. You will always do 2. That will not change. So go straight in and start with your next cluster. Okay, so remember we go in 5 times and we end up with 6 loops on the hook. And then we pull through all of those 6 loops. Okay. And then chain 2 or chain 1, depending on your tension. And we're still in the corner. You'll do 5 more in that chain space. Oh, come on. There. Okay. And the next step, now, as I explained in the other video, we will start to develop, there'll be spaces between the corners that we need to fill. So in all those spaces, we're just going to put a single bobble stitch, okay? And that is what enables our square to grow, okay? So as you can see, there's one corner, and then I've got this corner, but in between these 2 corners, I have a gap. There's a chain space there. That wasn't there in the previous round because the previous round was just corners. Now we have sides, as you would think of it. So it's now sides. Now, for every side that we come across, every chain space that's in between the corners, we just do a single bobble stitch. Okay. Okay. So a single bobble stitch will do, yeah. And then chain 2 again. Oh, my hair's popping up all over this project. It's not handmade unless you've got hair in it. Right. So into the corner, just like what we did before. So we're going to do another bobble stitch. So we go in 5 times until we have 6 loops on the hook. Now, someone asked me, how come there's 6 loops on the hook if I've only done 5 stitches? And that's because crochet it's always connected. So you always start and you always finish with one loop on the hook. That's just how it works. It's all connected at all times. So we're in a corner. So remember, we chain one and we do it again. Please, please, please make sure that your corners definitely have 2 bobble stitch clusters in them, because if they don't, you'll have to rip back and start again. You can't do a square, and it will not look right if you have a corner that only has 1 bobble stitch in it. It just can't work, okay? So remember, now we're at the side in between the 2 corners, so we only do 1 bobble stitch, okay? So this is the point, I'd say, especially if you're a beginner, when you really have to look at what you're doing, because you can you get complacent. You'll get to a point where you think, oh, I'm getting the hang of this, and then before you know it, you've missed a part, because and rightly so, you've grown in confidence. But what we tend to do is we then think, I know what I'm doing now, and then completely miss say a corner or a side. So just keep an eye out for that. Okay, so you see I'm going all the way around. Oops. So chain 2. So you'll notice as you go through, the square gets bigger and bigger and bigger. So I still have 1, 2, 3. So I'm still doing the corners, but I've just got this extra cluster in between each corner. And then the next round you'll have 2 single clusters between each corner, and then the round after that you'll have 3 in between each corner, and so on. Okay, so find your next chain space, and there we go. So find your next chain space and head in for that last corner. So there's no accounting for your individual tension, and that is why you should change the amount of chains between each stitch if you need to. You'll find as well that as you become more relaxed, your tension will loosen. Okay, so I've got 1 more side stitch to do, and then I've done the square. So I've chained 2, in we go. So bobble stitch, wrap round, 2, wrap round, 3, wrap round, 4, and 5. Pull through. Okay, so you can see it's starting to look more like a square. It's a bit messy at this point because it hasn't been joined to anything. But we just go into the top of the first bobble cluster that we did, and you'll see that it's starting ever so slightly to look like a square. You see? So the next round is a bit more of the same. So we'll just slip through. So never cut the yarn until you've slipped to the next corner. Always start in the corner, okay? It just creates, it's a lot more even. So I'll just cut this because I don't need it. So cut about 3 to 4 inches every time you cut the yarn, okay? So, you have to do about 24 of these squares, so don't feel bad about cutting the yarn because you need it for the next square, okay? Now, I've slipped to this corner, so I've got a chain space here. and I'm going to join the next yarn. Okay, there we go. So just make a corner as you did before. Right, I can cut that now because I don't. Just wanted to move along and do a couple of stitches before I cut it off. Right, so 1, 2, one more. Okay, and chain in again because this is a corner. All my yarn's chasing after me today. Okay, in we go. One corner done. So there'll only ever be 4 corner pieces. Now I've had people, beginners, get in touch and say, "Oh, why is my square a circle?" And it's because you've been adding corners where you don't need to. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so if you remember rightly, this here is one of the sides of the square. Now you'll see that because we've done another round, we've got another chain space. Okay, it's a chain space that is not a corner. So if it's not a corner, we just do 1 single bobble stitch in there. Okay, so chain 2. Let's go in again. 3, 4, 5. Okay, all the way around. And chain 2. Let's head for that next corner. So you keep doing this now until the end. So 2 bobble stitches in every corner, and then 2 single bobble stitches in every side chain space. So keep going. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so work your way all the way around until you've done that next row and the one after it.